I almost turned around the moment I saw my sister's car parked outside the reunion hall. Then I heard her voice. "Well, look who finally decided to show up." The room fell quiet as I stepped through the doorway. More than 40 relatives turned to stare. Some smiled politely, most just watched, waiting. Vanessa walked toward me with the confidence of someone who had never paid for what she'd done. Around her neck hung our grandmother's emerald pendant, the one Grandma had promised would stay with the oldest granddaughter until she died. She touched it deliberately before looking me up and down. "Still single," she laughed. "Lol." A few cousins snickered. Before I could answer, another familiar voice joined her. "Daniel." My ex-husband slipped an arm around Vanessa's waist and grinned like we were all sharing a joke. "Hey, ugly," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Still the same." Laughter spread through the room. Someone whispered, "She never got over him." Someone else muttered, "4 years and she's still alone." I felt every pair of eyes settle on me, waiting for me to break. I didn't. I simply looked at both of them. Then, from the head of the room, a chair scraped sharply across the floor. My mother stood. "Perfect timing," she said. The laughter stopped. "I have something important to tell all of you." Every head turned toward her. And for the first time in 4 years, Vanessa stopped smiling. 4 years earlier, I had walked away from this family convinced I would never come back. I hadn't left because of one affair. I had left because everyone who should have protected me chose the people who betrayed me instead. When I discovered Daniel and Vanessa together inside the home Daniel and I shared, I thought the hardest part would be ending my marriage. I was wrong. The divorce was easy compared to losing my entire family. My parents insisted I had been too focused on my career as a commercial real estate attorney. According to them, I hadn't made Daniel feel appreciated. Vanessa cried through every conversation, insisting she had never planned to fall in love with her own brother-in-law. "It just happened," she'd said while sitting beside Daniel. My parents believed every word. When the divorce became official, Vanessa and Daniel married less than a year later. Nobody objected. Instead, my family toasted them. After that, I stopped attending birthdays, holidays, and reunions. I buried myself in work, built my career, bought my own home, and slowly learned how to live without people who had made me feel disposable. When my aunt called 2 weeks earlier to say this year's reunion would include everyone, I almost declined. Then she quietly added something that caught me off guard. "Your mother specifically asked if you'd come." That alone was unusual. For 4 years, my mother had barely spoken to me beyond short birthday texts and holiday messages. Now she wanted me there. Standing inside the reunion hall, I still couldn't understand why. Vanessa seemed perfectly comfortable. Daniel looked just as arrogant as ever. Several relatives avoided looking directly at me, embarrassed by what had just happened. Others seemed entertained. My mother remained standing beside the long dining table instead of asking everyone to eat. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was unreadable. She slowly looked around the room before speaking again. "Before anyone sits down," she said calmly, "I'd like everyone to stay exactly where they are." No one moved. Not even Vanessa. The silence settled over the room like a heavy blanket. No one reached for a chair. No one picked up a plate. Even the children stopped talking as they sensed something unusual was happening. I remained near the entrance while Vanessa leaned comfortably against Daniel, her confidence returning now that my mother hadn't immediately said anything else. She smirked. "So," she said loudly enough for several relatives to hear, "looks like you're still married to your career." A few people chuckled. Daniel laughed with them. "I guess some people are just impossible to live with." He looked directly at me. "Maybe that's why you couldn't keep a husband." I held his gaze. I managed to lose the wrong one. His smile tightened for just a second before he laughed again. Vanessa squeezed his hand. "See," she said, "she's still bitter." "I'm not bitter," I replied evenly. "I'm just honest." The room became quiet again. Someone quickly changed the subject, but the awkwardness remained. Standing there, I couldn't stop remembering the day everything had fallen apart. 4 years earlier, I'd come home early from work after canceling a client meeting. Daniel's car was already in the driveway. So was Vanessa's. At first, I smiled. I assumed she'd stopped by to visit. Instead, I opened our bedroom door. Neither of them noticed me immediately. The look on Daniel's face when he finally turned around wasn't guilt. It was annoyance. Vanessa burst into tears before I had even spoken. "It's not what it looks like," she cried. "It looks exactly like what it is," I answered. Within hours, both of them had started calling family members. By the next morning, the story had somehow become my fault. My mother insisted I had neglected my marriage. My father said no man wanted to come home to a wife who worked late every night. Vanessa claimed she'd fallen in love without meaning to. Daniel said our marriage had already been over emotionally. No one asked what I had experienced. No one asked how I was sleeping. No one asked whether I had eaten. Instead, they told me to forgive them. I refused. A month later, I packed my belongings and left the family home for good. I never attended another gathering. I never defended myself publicly. And despite everything they said about me, I never told anyone how my own sister had destroyed my marriage. Back inside the reunion hall, I noticed several cousins whispering while glancing toward me. I heard she's never dated anyone since. That's sad. She probably still misses him. Vanessa heard them too. She smiled proudly and lifted her left hand so everyone could admire her wedding ring. "You know," she said, resting her head against Daniel's shoulder, "marriage is wonderful when two people are actually compatible." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "It really is." Several relatives nodded approvingly. I simply folded my hands together. Nothing they said could change what had already happened. Then I noticed something strange. My mother wasn't watching me. She wasn't watching Vanessa either. She was watching Daniel. Every time he laughed. Every time he spoke. Every time he reached for Vanessa's hand. She studied him with an expression I'd never seen before. Not pride. Not approval. Almost disappointment. She slowly walked away from the head table and stopped in the middle of the room. Her voice was calm. "Before anyone celebrates this family." She looked directly at Vanessa. "There are things everyone deserves to know." The smiles around the room disappeared. No one spoke. The only sound in the room was the soft hum of the air conditioner. My mother bent beside her chair and lifted a leather briefcase onto the dining table. I had never seen that briefcase before. She unlatched it carefully and removed 3 thick folders, placing them side by side. Vanessa frowned. "Mom, what is this?" My mother didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked around the room, making eye contact with each member of the family. I've spent the last several months thinking about mistakes I've made. Several relatives exchanged confused glances. My aunt slowly lowered the glass she had been holding. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Daniel forced a smile. "Everyone makes mistakes." "Yes," my mother replied. "Some mistakes hurt other people." She turned toward me. For 4 years, I believed I had done the right thing. I didn't say anything. I thought I was protecting the family. Vanessa quickly stepped beside her. "Mom, whatever this is, we don't need to do it in front of everyone." "We do." Her voice remained calm. I should have listened to both daughters instead of only one. The room became noticeably quieter. Vanessa laughed nervously. "This is about ancient history. No, my mother said. It's about what I discovered this year. Daniel crossed his arms. What exactly did you discover? Without responding, my mother opened the first folder. She removed several photographs and spread them across the table. People nearest the table leaned closer. Then one cousin gasped. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Daniel stared at the photographs without moving. They showed him entering hotels with the same woman on different dates. Several more photographs showed them leaving restaurants hand in hand. Another captured them embracing in a parking garage. The timestamps stretched across more than a year. Vanessa blinked repeatedly. What? She picked up one of the photographs. And what is this? Daniel immediately reached for it. It's fake. My mother calmly slid another stack toward the center of the table. Those are hotel registration records. Then another. Restaurant receipts. Then another. Travel reservations. Each document carried dates. Matching dates. Matching locations. One uncle quietly compared a receipt with one of the photographs. They match. Another relative looked through the hotel records. He checked in under his own name. Vanessa looked at Daniel. Tell them this isn't real. He forced a laugh. Anyone can fake paperwork. Can they also fake surveillance photographs? My mother asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. I don't know where you got any of this. I hired a licensed private investigator. The words landed heavily across the room. Vanessa stared at her mother. You investigated my husband. I investigated unusual behavior after I noticed repeated inconsistencies. Daniel stepped forward. This is ridiculous. No, my mother answered. Believing you without asking questions was ridiculous. Several relatives who had laughed at me earlier now avoided looking in my direction. Instead, they looked at Daniel. One by one. The room had changed. Just minutes ago, I had been the object of ridicule. Now every conversation revolved around him. Vanessa shook her head frantically. There has to be an explanation. Daniel grabbed her wrist. We're leaving. He started pulling her toward the exit. Sit down. My mother's voice wasn't loud. But everyone stopped. Even Daniel. She reached into the briefcase once more. This time she removed a single large sealed envelope. Unlike everything else on the table, it bore the signature of an attorney across the seal. She rested one hand on it. Then she looked directly at Vanessa and Daniel. This, she said quietly, is the part none of you know. No one moved. Daniel's hand slowly slipped away from Vanessa's wrist. The sealed envelope sat in the center of the table like it weighed 100 pounds. Every eye in the room was fixed on it. Instead of opening it immediately, my mother folded her hands. There is something you all need to understand before I read what's inside. Vanessa swallowed. Mom, please, let's talk about this privately. There has already been too much privacy. My mother looked around the room. That's how this family ended up here. She turned toward me. When I became seriously ill 8 months ago, the doctors weren't sure whether I would need surgery. Several relatives nodded. Most of them had known she'd been hospitalized. Few knew how serious it had been. I didn't tell everyone how frightened I was. Her voice remained steady. But I learned something during those weeks. She looked at Vanessa. I called you. Vanessa lowered her eyes. You said you were busy. I had work. You told me you'd visit the following weekend. Silence. You never came. Vanessa opened her mouth. No words came out. My mother slowly turned toward Daniel. I called you as well. Daniel cleared his throat. I figured Vanessa was handling it. You never called back. He looked away. Then my mother faced me. I never expected Precious to come. Several relatives looked toward me. I hadn't spoken to her properly in years. She smiled sadly. But the morning after I was admitted, she looked directly into my eyes. She walked into my hospital room carrying a notebook. I remembered that morning perfectly. She had looked exhausted, scared, smaller than I had ever seen her. "I thought you might need someone to keep track of what the doctors said," I'd told her. "I'll write everything down." My mother nodded slowly. "You attended every consultation." I stayed quiet. "You organized my medications. You spoke with specialists. You reviewed insurance paperwork. You never once mentioned what had happened between us." I hadn't. Not once. Because she was still my mother. Whatever pain existed between us, I wasn't going to let it interfere with her treatment. I asked why you kept helping me. She looked at everyone gathered around the room. "Do you remember what you said?" I nodded slightly. I said, my voice was calm, "You're my mother. Nothing more. Nothing less." The room became completely still. No one laughed anymore. No one whispered. One of my aunts quietly wiped tears from her face. My mother continued. That answer haunted me. She looked at Vanessa again. I started asking myself why the daughter I had pushed away was the only one standing beside me. She paused, so I began looking backward. She explained how she reread old messages, reviewed old family conversations, compared stories, questioned assumptions she had accepted without evidence. The more I looked, she shook her head. The more ashamed I became. Vanessa stepped forward. "I'm sorry." It came out barely above a whisper. "I was selfish." She reached toward me. "I should never have." "No." My mother interrupted. "Don't apologize because you're afraid." Vanessa froze. "Apologize because you understand." Daniel suddenly spoke. This has gone far enough. His voice had lost its earlier confidence. "You're embarrassing everyone." "No," my mother replied. "The embarrassment began 4 years ago." Daniel looked around the room. "Let's go." He reached for Vanessa again. She didn't move. For the first time since I'd arrived. She pulled her hand away from his. He stared at her in disbelief. Then he looked toward me, as if somehow this was my fault. I met his eyes. "I never asked for this." He didn't answer. He couldn't. My mother rested one hand on the sealed envelope. Then she looked around the room. "Would anyone like to know?" She slowly broke the attorney's seal. "Who now owns everything I spent my life building?" Every person in the room leaned forward. The tear along the sealed envelope sounded louder than anything else in the room. My mother carefully removed several documents, placing them on the table one at a time. At the top was a notarized copy of her revised estate plan. She looked around the room before speaking. 6 months ago, after I recovered, I met with my attorney. No one interrupted. I realized I had spent years rewarding the wrong behavior. She turned toward Vanessa. I confused loyalty with agreement. Then she looked at me. And I punished the one person who never stopped treating me like family. Vanessa shook her head. "Mom, no." My mother slid the first page across the table. "My estate has been completely revised." My uncle picked it up, adjusted his glasses, and silently read the first page before passing it to another relative. Every face changed as the documents moved around the room. My mother continued. "Vanessa Bennett has been removed from every inheritance, every property interest, and every future leadership role connected to our family's assets." Vanessa stared at her. "You disinherited me." "I did." She pointed toward Daniel. "And Daniel Hayes has no claim to anything belonging to this family, now or in the future." Daniel finally found his voice. You can't do this because of rumors. My mother calmly looked at him. I didn't. She tapped the photographs, receipts, and investigators' report still spread across the table. I did it because of evidence. Daniel turned toward the relatives. This is unbelievable. No one answered. The same cousins who had laughed at me earlier now refused to meet his eyes. One uncle quietly folded the investigator's report and placed it back on the table. I've seen enough. Another relative nodded. So have I. Daniel looked at Vanessa. Say something. She didn't. Instead, she slowly removed her wedding ring. She stared at it for several seconds before placing it on the table between them. You lied to me. Her voice cracked. For over a year. Daniel stepped closer. I can explain. She took a step backward. No. Tears filled her eyes. I destroyed my own sister because I believed you. The room remained silent. There was nothing left to defend. My mother picked up the final document. This appointment names the new executor of my estate. She looked directly at me. It also names the future trustee responsible for overseeing everything I spent my life building. She smiled sadly. Precious. I didn't move. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. The words were heavy. I chose the wrong daughter. A tear rolled down her cheek. I believed lies because they were easier than admitting I had failed to protect you. For the first time in 4 years, I saw regret instead of pride. Real regret. She walked toward me slowly. I'm sorry. Not the quick apology people offer to end uncomfortable conversations. Not an excuse. Not a justification. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. The room waited. I looked at my mother for a long moment. Then I spoke quietly. I can't erase what happened. She nodded. I know. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life carrying it. She covered her mouth as tears fell freely. I stepped forward and hugged her. The room stayed completely silent. No applause. No dramatic reactions. Just a mother holding the daughter she had failed for far too long. Behind us, Daniel reached for Vanessa one last time. We can fix this. She stepped away again. There isn't in us anymore. He looked around the room, searching for support. No one offered it. One by one, relatives turned their backs on him. Without another word, Daniel walked out of the reunion hall alone. The door closed behind him. Several seconds later, Vanessa quietly followed. Not beside him. Not holding his hand. Just walking out carrying the weight of every decision she had made. The reunion eventually continued, but nothing felt the same. Relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years approached one after another. Some apologized. Some admitted they should have questioned what they had been told. Others simply hugged me. No speech could undo the past. But the truth had finally reached the people who mattered. Over the following months, the legal transition happened exactly as my mother had planned. Every document had already been signed, witnessed, and properly filed. There were no successful challenges. I accepted the responsibility of overseeing the family's estate, not because I wanted revenge, but because I intended to protect what my grandparents had built. My mother and I didn't repair 4 broken years overnight. Trust doesn't return because of one apology. It returned through small conversations, shared dinners, doctor's appointments, holidays, and consistent choices. As for Vanessa, she filed for divorce not long afterward. She tried reaching out several times. I wished her peace, but I never tried to rebuild the relationship. Some bridges aren't destroyed in a single day. And some can't be rebuilt simply because the fire has burned out. Today, my life is quieter than it was before any of this happened. I no longer measure my happiness by who chose me. I measure it by the peace I finally found after choosing myself. 4 years ago, they laughed because they believed I had lost everything. They never imagined the family reunion would become the day I finally got my life back.